Can. Can
Ah,
you hear
amazing.
me?
How are you doing?
I'm all right. Yeah. How are you?
I'm,
Thanks for
I'm,
having
I'm
me.
I'm slightly perspired. I had to like race to get here from where I was working today, and I was worried I wasn't going to make it. I literally sat down like 2 minutes ago, so I was quite pleased I managed to kind of get the buses and trains to line up.
God, I know. Yeah. Oh, that's fine. Where are you working at the moment?
Down in Isleworth, which is not a brilliant journey from like I'm in Brixton. Hey, Renzo.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, just heading down there to kind of work on some sort of corporate stuff. How have you been sort of doing with the kind of the sort of the shenanigans of the release? Obviously, you've been probably doing a few chats like this, I guess, have you?
Yeah, a few, and yeah, a lot of interviews, and yeah, it's been quite a train journey. I've never really had to sort of do it to this extent before. So yeah, it's been a lot, but it's really nice to actually get to the point where you can talk about what you've made and stuff, because obviously there's all these massive periods of time where you're not really finishing anything, or so yeah, it's a kind of it's a nice kind of but yeah, it's been quite intensive.
So you were with Verve, weren't you? Because I was we were with Verve when we released with American The Bill Hicks Story. So we worked with them like back in
Cool.
2000 and I'm going to say 11, 2010, 2011.
Okay, cool. I didn't know that. Yeah, just with Colin
Right.
and Catherine. Yeah, so no, they've been lovely. So yeah, it's just a small, it's only a handful of screens really in across the UK, but then obviously on demand and all of that.
Are you up to sort of speed on like how that's doing? Do they feed back a lot on like kind of what the figures are like? I'm quite interested to know on how that on demand stuff kind of works with theatrical releases. Did you get any intel on that at all?
I don't have any information yet. I've just been thinking about that like just before I got on this call, but I don't have anything from them as yet. So I'm as interested to know as anyone else. Because it's such a weird time to be like trying to get people to go to the cinema as well. It's like
You were in five screens, weren't you? You were in Crouch End. I think you were in Manchester at home, and then you were in Glasgow and Edinburgh. Is that right?
yeah, that's right. That's completely spot on. So actually, yeah, I went to screening myself on Friday, and that was really nice. I went to the one in Crouch End. I would like to go to, I'm not sure if I can really go up to Edinburgh, but I've got some family in Scotland, so they'll be keeping an eye on how the ones in the film house are doing. But it's nice to go to all these, like I love the film house, like I have a real kind of nostalgia for that. So
Yeah.
it's nice to be showing there. That's particularly cool.
Did you get much of a kind of a sort of a breadth of choice in terms of like sort of where you were going to get to go, and did you kind of sort of get a chance to sort of be a part of that process? How did that work?
I wasn't really part of the process. It was sort of like, because to be honest, for a while it kind of looked like it would just be on demand because of lockdown. And
Yeah.
well, when Verve came on board, it was like in March. So yeah, it was just when we were going into like lockdown period, and then there were all these conversations, and yeah, so I just it was so up and down that honestly, like I didn't kind of set my store on what would happen one way or another, because everything in the world is so changeable.
Yeah.
Actually, a few weeks before we started doing all the PR stuff, Colin at Verve was like, these are the ones I'm thinking of. And actually, I think it became slightly less as we moved on, because I think cinemas are just in a bit of a precarious state anyway. So yeah, and then obviously the thing with Picture House and Cineworld happened,
Yeah.
and then that's a little bit of a knock on as to what screens wanted to show our film, because they were suddenly getting offers of lots of other films that weren't going to be able to screen at Picture House. So it's just all this stuff that I had never really anticipated. So yeah, to sort of sum up, no, I didn't really get much of an input, but I'm really happy with where it's showing, and I think it's appropriate choices for the film and so on.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we sort of welcome Lucy officially? So this is No Direction Home, and we're going to be talking about Lucy's rather lovely film Body of Water, which I hope some of you have had a chance to see. And so we've got a few people joining us now, but we've also got 600 members who we post this information for and video for tomorrow. And we've also been sort of pushing that. I mean, you're on my mailing list, so you kind of seen the email. So we've been pushing that and pushing people towards towards Curzon Home Cinema and Sky Movies and where else it can be streamed. Obviously, as we've been talking about, it's a strange time to put out a film. I mean, was that something that you were scared of? That it was scary for the team? I don't mean personally scary, but just
yeah.
film.
I mean, I think it was a bit sort of, I think the thing that we've all learned is like how little control we have over like so many aspects of life, and also, I mean, this industry which we have so little control over a lot of the time anyway. So yeah, it was a bit like, but I to be honest, I'm quite used to it just being like, okay, this has changed, and you know, it's going to be something you didn't quite expect. So to be honest, I think I was kind of used to rolling with the punches, and I think, you know, as saying, like, this year's just been so insane anyway that for the film industry to sort of not be like that, it would have been a bit of an anomaly. So no, I think you know, we've handled it all right, but it was, you know, it was just a bit confusing about like what the path for our release was going to be for quite a while. But now obviously we've got through it, and we're releasing, and that's the main thing.
Well, I mean, obviously, some people maybe, depending on how you see it, had it worse. I was speaking to Prano Bailey Bond about her film, and obviously they had to wait for several months to go back to do, I think, their final week of like kind of reshoots, and obviously you're essentially on hold in terms of your post at that point. So I think everybody's experienced it in different ways. I was wondering if it was okay if you could take us back to the start of the process, because obviously I've had a look at your press notes, which were sent through by Chris, and the film has actually been in gestation for quite a long time. Is it more than a decade, would you say?
Oh, maybe not as long as that, but yeah, it's been quite a while. I would say probably about 7 years max.
Okay.
Like for me, like, you know, starting to think about it very latterly to actually now. Yeah, that's probably about the max. But I was really interested in, I wanted to write something about eating disorders, because it was something that I knew really well, that I had experienced, and that I just thought I had not seen a particularly convincing or like, you know, particularly powerful rendering of it in film. That's just my opinion. And also like the narratives of these stories tend to be focused on, you know, teenage girls or younger girls, and you know, and it tends to be a story about like how they get sick or how they get better really, like, you know, quickly and improbably. So I just find like the whole area kind of interesting. And then I wrote a short that it got some funding, and it got selected for this thing at the Clermont-Ferrand Short Film Festival.
Right.
Like the Euro, I can't remember, it's like they select a project from each country. This is when we were still in Europe, you see. So yeah, we went over there and we pitched, and we got, you know, we had a lot of interest and traction. But then at the same time, I'd just been like in my own time writing a feature script just because, you know. And then I met Dan Cleland, who became the producer at the Edinburgh Film Festival not Talent Lab Network thing. In 2014, and so he sort of joined, and we were working on it together, and then we put it into the Film London, obviously micro budget initiative, Microwave,
yes.
And then which is obviously quite well known for like Lilting and things like that, and most recently Mari. So then, yeah, and then it got selected for that, and then it went through these various rounds of selection, like they do with iFeatures. You know, they select 12 projects, then they develop them for a bit. We did a boot camp with a bunch of really great film professionals, like Lynn Ramsey was there, and Jim Wilson, who produced like stuff from Jonathan Glazer, and Tracy O'Riordan, who's Clive Bernard's producer. So it was really great, top caliber people. After that boot camp, I think we had to repitch the project, and then they cut down the projects to 6. And then after a few months of developing the script, we then had to repitch the project again. And they select 2, and ours was one of the final selection. Yeah, it's obviously quite a low budget. It's 150k, that's the cap.
Yeah.
So, you know, you're always kind of conscious of that as you're I mean, there was extra financing for the development time, but yeah, it was not massive. So it was like, you know, but I think, you know, all along I was aware of the budget restrictions, and that it wasn't like I always like to see it as a sort of challenge, that kind of stuff, not like, oh no, I don't have millions of pounds, but also like, what can I do that's interesting in a small, in a quite a contained sort of space that's not boring and that's like different. And this definitely sort of lent itself to that, just because it is a lot of one character, like, experiencing something on her own. And
yeah.
Obviously there's a lot of food or not there's a lot of food in the film, so so yeah, it worked out. I think it worked for that budget level, but yeah, that was tough as well.
Well, I was interested in reading that because one of the films, I didn't actually know that until I read this in your notes, that Lynn Ramsey had been one of the mentors, and Cleo Bernard as well. But I must admit, when I watched the film, without consciously kind of sort of thinking of it, I did find myself thinking about You Were Never Really Here, just as
really?
just in terms of it, not really to do with the plot. It's more like the character and the mood, I guess, like this one person kind of struggling or battling against, and in that particular film, funnily enough, that character did have a backstory which was to do with a war experience, shall we say. Yeah, that was something that came to mind. How was it? Did you get much time with Lynn and Cleo? Did they help you at all?
Yeah, that's a massive compliment, by the way. I love that film, and also, I think that character and the sort of pacing of that film, like that, that sort of, I think, sort of speaks a little bit to what I was hoping to do with Body of Water. But Lynn was sort of around for just that week, really, although she did look at stuff afterwards. But then she was going into production on You Were Never Really Here, so she was really swept up with that, because this was just before she went into that.
Yeah.
So that was it's kind of fun looking back to that, because she was talking about it and how she was talking about it, and then obviously seeing how well it did. But she was fantastic. Like, we had some, she gave us some talks. There was Q&As with her and Jim. I think Jim ended up working on You Were Never Really Here.
Right.
I think that might have been how they met, which is kind of funny. But and so she was actually, she really loved the project, and she was the one that said to me really early on, like, you should watch like Safe by Todd Haynes if you haven't seen it.
Yes.
And I hadn't seen it, and like that actually really was a hugely influential, ended up being quite influential in terms of how obviously I'd already seen like things like John Dielman and stuff, obviously very contained, static camera on one woman in a space, but Safe was a really helpful tip, and she's just awesome. Like, she's really funny as well. But Clio came in a bit later. She we were sort of asked who we would like to be mentored by when we had got the commission, so we were down to the 2 projects. And I said, because the producers have been working with Tracy O'Riordan, who's her producer on Dark River and I think all of her films, I said, it seemed like a natural thing to think, and also just because of our sense of taste and sensibility, and like, so yeah, she was also amazing. It was a bit more of a sort of drawn out mentorship with her, so we had a few sessions, but she gave me a lot of script feedback and encouragement. But it's just really nice to sort of have someone who obviously, like, I guess she sort of knows kind of, she obviously knows what it feels like, and you can reach out to her, and she was very accommodating for a lot of my probably very junior questions, I should say.
Well, yeah, and I mean, obviously she's been through like a kind of a quite interesting sort of arc, in terms of, like, The Arbor was like such a kind of a sort of a thing at the time, and everybody was talking about it, and it was very much like a kind of a wow, that's almost a new form. There was something very special about that. Was it, just out of interest, before we talk specifically about Body of Water, just referencing those filmmakers, were there any filmmakers that you found yourself drawn to, like at the start of your sort of like understanding that you might be a filmmaker yourself? Was there anyone particularly? I'm not looking for specific references. I just wondered if there was anybody whose work you kind of resonated with, like, as you were kind of starting out.
I don't know. I think I always liked Michel Franco, the Mexican director, who does lots of like really static long shots, and he always has this sort of quiet, creeping horror about his work that it's just uncomfortable. And like, there's something about that I've always really appreciated, and I kind of like, I've followed his career I think he's got a new film that was just in Cannes actually. But no, I think he was definitely someone. And then obviously like British directors like Lynn, I mean, you know, you can't not like appreciate Lynn, even if, you know, particularly I think for me, well, actually Morven Caller, I really love that a lot. Just, you know, that kind of messiness and those kind of messy characters. And but she's just got such a visionary eye that you know, you can't help but kind of look up to her. And obviously Clio as well. I mean, yeah, The Arbor was like a really special film, and it still is. And then obviously her career progressed from there, but still The Arbor for me is one of my all-time favorite films. So yeah, and I was really lucky because I, you know, obviously got to sort of chat with these people. So yeah, that was they were probably, yeah, my top three, I would say.
And so when you came to the sort of the microwave scheme, was there a sort of obviously you're being is it from 12 down to 6 and then down to 2, is that right?
I think yeah, I'm 99% sure that's what it was. Yeah, because yeah, and then the only the first the 12 who did the boot camp thing,
Right.
and then yeah, there was this repitching thing, and then there was a lot of time between that part and then the next pitch. So there was like a few months of script development, and then there was this repitch with, you know, BFI and BBC Films and everyone there. So it was quite loaded. But
I think I saw Angeline McFarlane's name as well. I mean, I've worked with Angeline a couple of times, and I rate her so highly. I just think she's absolutely wonderful. Did you get any time with her at all?
Yeah, she was really. I like got really close to Angeline. That's really cool that you work with her. Like yeah, I love Angeline. I'd love to work with her again. And but she basically did a lot of script editing on the project. So
Yeah.
her influence was very much there, and she really like she really became like, we became pretty close over the course of working on the project, because it's, you know, it's quite personal material, and it's like you just
Yes.
I think for script editors sometimes they must, almost like editors as well, I think they sort of feel like they're therapists or something, because you end up just telling them all this stuff and they're like, okay. But no, she was amazing. Angeli is terrific. And then Olivier Camphor and Jordan McGarry were also involved. You know, I mean, you know, we met them a lot and they were like hugely supportive, but they were always like, you know, just do something bold, because I guess bottom line is it's not a lot of money really for a feature film. So it's like, well, you know, you may as well just try and do something a bit ballsy, because this is an opportunity to do that you might not necessarily get again, or how if you had, you know, more budget.
Well, I mean, it's interesting as well. So Angeli, we're talking about something at the moment which I hope comes off, and we get the chance to sort of do something together again, which would be lovely. But the thing that I really loved about her was that she made you feel like you'd come up with the idea, which is one of those really clever things that clever people can do, where they're kind of like helping you think. And I was just wondering, like, how much the script overall had changed, or the project's conception in your mind had changed over the process of Microwave. Like, did it go through some big changes for you, or was it always pretty much there, and you were just being helped to refine your voice and your vision?
Yeah, I mean, I think, to be honest, I think the temple parts of the story largely remained the same, no matter where you know, I did so many drafts, and some drafts were just hugely over influenced by notes, because there's that sort of insecurity of being a first time filmmaker and being like, oh, I better listen to everyone because you all must know much better than me, etc. But I think looking back, yeah, the actual broad strokes of the story remain the same, because it was always about a woman who wants to rebuild a relationship with her daughter, and to an extent her mother. And the thing that she has to overcome is this issue, that in this anorexia that she has, that's almost like a kind of it's like a toxic relationship in and of itself. So but I would say tonally there were some shifts. Like I think my initial ideas probably verged a bit more into the horror territory,
Right.
but never really explicitly. But yeah, there was definitely tinges of it, and I think that definitely got a bit more dialed back in the development process, and then in the finished article for sure. But yeah, I think that suits the project, because it's quite a sensitive and tricky subject. You obviously need to kind of, it was sort of, we had to be really careful about how we presented it, and you know, what it seemed like we're trying to say with the film,
Mm.
because it is, you know, it's a complex message as well. Yeah, but I think that, yeah, as I say, I think those ideas were just sort of refined and honed over the development period, but it did sometimes feel like I was losing track of them, but then I think that's normal in
Mm.
development.
Well, one of the things that came to mind, I mean, particularly having, I mean, I knew about the film and then obviously watched it last week, but one of the things that did come to mind, and particularly in one scene where I think Shan's characters, is it Shan or Sean?
Shan.
Sean.
Shan. Yeah.
So where her mother basically sees her change into her wedding dress, and you see her back, and like you see quite how kind of thin she is. I must admit, when I saw that, I kind of thought, I wondered whether you'd have ever had any doubts about being able to find somebody who would be able to fulfil the kind of the physical requirements of the role, because obviously it's part of the character. And I wondered whether that had ever kind of felt like a concern that you wouldn't be able to find the person, or that it would be hard to do that.
Yeah, it was a really big part of our conversations in development with all the execs. Like, I had to kind of talk to them numerous times about how this was going to actually work, and how we would do it in a way that wasn't like, you know, that was still sort of ethical and taking care of our actors. Obviously, we knew that that was a really important part of the film, and there was a suggestion at some point that it should be perhaps a bulimic character, because that doesn't necessarily manifest in a way that is so obvious. Like, they don't, like, bulimic people don't necessarily have to be of a certain stereotypical body shape or whatever.
Right.
But I think I just felt like the challenge was there, and I don't know, I just was like quite dogmatic about it, because I was like, well, I don't know. I think it's also one of those things that if you start making one compromise, then what else? Then that was quite a big compromise. So I was like, right, now I really need to stick with this. But I know it's going to be tough, and I know that obviously, you know, not every actor is going to be up for doing it, and that's fine. So yeah, we started casting. Obviously, the first person we looked at casting was this character, was the main character of Stephanie. I didn't actually really see very many actresses for that role. I saw many more for the other roles. And the casting director is Aisha Bywaters, who's awesome. And she really early on was like, look, I think you should talk to Sharon Britt, because she's fantastic. And also, like, I think she's sort of got she's got the kind of tenacity and mindset, and is so committed to her craft, that I think she would take, you know, because it is quite a big risk for an actor as well. You know, I think she would do a really good job in the character, but then also in this aspect of it, I think she's tough enough and strong enough. And, you know, because it's something you also have to be conscious of with this stuff, is that many actors, or, you know, people in this industry may have experienced these kinds of problems, and you can't, like, you don't want to like trigger someone back to any particular eating disorder they might have had before, etc., etc. Yeah. So I had a few meetings with Shan, and we really, well, one, we just really got on, which I think, you know, to go on this kind of journey with each other, we kind of really had to. But she trusted me, and I trusted her. But she said, you know, she knew, she was a bit scared of reading the script, because she knew what it was going to involve if she liked it. And then she read it and she did like it, so she was like, oh shit. But she just we talked about a lot about the weight stuff, because obviously she's a mother, she's got 2 kids, little kids, and she's, you know, she wants to have a life outside of this project. So we had to think of a way to you know, help her like look a certain way, but you know, still be physically strong and able to do, you know, to function normally in life. But you know, so she had and she you know, she did take some time to think about it. Like, it wasn't an immediate yes for her, because, like, I think, you know, she had all these things to consider, and so on. But then you know, we sort of found a person who did sort of physical training and nutritionist work. So we brought him on board to kind of you know, supervise her, give her a workout, give her a diet plan, and all of this. And obviously he was there if she ever needed to speak to anyone. and then that was it. And then you know, she got, you know, she was really super committed, and you know, the film wouldn't be what it is without that. So I really feel like, you know, I owe her a lot. But you know, even in the, you know, production, it did, you know, as we got closer and closer to production, you know, I would meet her, and it was like, you know, I would see the changes in her, and you know, it was like, you know, troubling, because you know, obviously you're like, I don't want someone to put their health on the line to do like a film project. That's obviously not. But I have to say, like, men do that sort of thing all the time, and no one really says anything about it. Like Christian Bale or whatever, he'll just like, you know, thinking of something like The Machinist, he's always changing his body shape. So it's like, well, actually, if she wants to do it, and it's health and it's okay, and it's obviously just for a short-term period, because the shoot obviously wasn't particularly long either.
No.
She should just do it. And I think, you know, it really, it is shocking, but I think that's the reality of this thing. So, you know, and she's not even, you know, fully anorexic, because obviously we can do that, but like, you know, it's shocking anyway. So I think that really adds a sort of power to the story, that it, you know, just her physicality, really.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the things to bear in mind, obviously, with the Christian Bale, I think it was something like he went from The Machinist to the first Batman in something like 6 weeks. But that kind of thing, I believe, does and can do things like damage your kidneys and stuff.
Completely.
Like it can be quite, you know, risky.
No, we were aware of that, and like this trainer had worked with Nicole Kidman on a stage play where she had to kind of she played a role where she had she was a character had cancer, and she had to be very lean and small, but also very strong. So that was sort of what we went for with this. And I think it works, but it was like a huge undertaking, obviously, for Shan.
Yeah. I mean, was there any moments when you were, so maybe you can just sort of give us that practical kind of like, you know, sort of boring filmmakery bit about like how long your shoot was, and like where it was, and like the kind of the sort of technical bits of setting it up and how long it lasted, and your days and that kind of stuff.
We shot, I mean, the initial shoot was only 16 days, so that was really tight, as you can imagine. And then we had one pickup day in Seaford, but we had 7 of those days were in London, in 2 of the 2 main house locations. They were in Greater London.
Right.
And the rest of the exteriors and actually even some of the interiors were in Canvey Island in Essex, which is, you know, I don't know. I mean, it's quite a distinctive kind of place, so that was why I chose that. But and then, yeah, it was a real like balls to the wall shoot. Obviously, they're always like that, but it was, you know, really tight, and you know, we had to be really economical throughout. But you know, we pulled it off.
Well, I mean, I suppose it just depends. Like, so our last guest was Claire Oakley, who did makeup, and obviously that's maybe somebody that you know. I suspect you might.
I'm friends with Claire. Yeah,
absolutely. But you know, I mean, she was saying, I was kind of flabbergasted that I think she had 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And you're like, wow, like, I mean, either you're maybe operating on a skeleton crew in order to be able to sort of eke it out that long, because I think that her film was an eye features, wasn't it? So you know, it's not, you know, millions that she's got. So I mean, I guess everybody just cuts their cloth differently according to, you know, what you have available and what you need to get done.
Yeah.
What was the thing that surprised you most about the shoot? Was there like sort of anything that really kind of like sort of turned your head and went, oh wow, we didn't know that was going to be like that?
I think I had so many locations, and that's something I look back and I'm like, you know what, actually I could, if I did condense them a bit anyway, and like removed a few and streamlined it as you always do, but I think I could have probably done that a bit more, because sometimes just, the moves and the actual time we got on camera for the actors, I felt a bit like, especially for Shan, because she'd done all this work, I was always like, oh God, I need to give this woman time to shine, because she's like worked her arse off. So yeah, that was something that I was you know, continually like, oh my God, the day just disappears. But, and yeah, it was really like lightning. But I think, you know, in a way we had a few mishaps. There were a few, you know, as always, but, I think it was just, I'm always not, you know, I always like this thing about independent film crews that, you know, no matter what happens is like, there is always a way out, and everyone will kind of come together and figure it out, even if it's like super stressful. So yeah, I think it was always, I kind of, you know, always knew that the crew would have my back, but it was, yeah, sometimes some days were quite tough. Like there are a few locations that just, the first one, when they're at the eating disorder clinic, there was a bit of a problem with one of the cast members, and they got very upset. And
Right.
it was just a lot of emotional, like that was really like, that really threw us, like me and Shan actually, it threw us both off, because I think we were, you know, two of the people most emotionally invested in the project, and like and everyone's kind of welfare. But yeah, this actress, you know, was very distressed, and yeah, it it was tough, but yeah, yeah, I think it'll make any film I make next seem like a walk in the park by comparison. It was hard.
Well, yes, maybe some light, frothy romantic comedy or something next.
Yeah, maybe something a bit later.
But you did mention though, because obviously that's interesting in that you know, you obviously being careful of not wanting to trigger anyone, and that applied to actresses and people that you were asking to be a part of it. And obviously there you've got, you know, maybe a supporting person but who's been emotionally affected. And one of the things that I didn't really know about before watching the film was about like the kind of the trigger websites, which are where you know, people are encouraging the posting of those photos. Did you ever think, I'm assuming you must have discussed that in terms of the project as a whole, that you didn't want to be encouraging people when they are and apparently can be, according to the film, that, you know, they can be encouraged. I just wondered.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I mean, absolutely, it's something you've got to be really careful with this stuff. And it's such a, once you start uncovering it and you start researching it, I did a lot of research over the years, and you know, it's very toxic, and it's very the people who are kind of enmeshed in eating issues, they do tend to be quite also fascinated by seeing them. Like I know that To the Bone film with Lily Collins, I know that, you know, that a lot of girls watch that numerous times. Like when I went to a clinic in Norfolk to research, which was a private clinic, I wasn't able to visit any NHS facilities, unfortunately.
Right.
I talked to some girls that, I mean, they were all girls, but I talked to some girls there or women, and they were all like, oh yeah, we've watched that film over and over again, and this and that. And I was like, that's really, that was so like, that's a really uncomfortable thing to hear. But they do, but the problem with that film is, I think, and a lot of other people who, you know, have either experienced eating disorders, have a relative has, that, you know, it does present Lily Collins as this sort of delicate, beautiful rosebud that's then, you know, and then she's very dainty, and it's just, you know, it's quite troubling in a lot of ways, and the way they frame her, etc., etc. So it was kind of the opposite of what I was trying to do, because I just find, like, obviously having been through some of this stuff myself, not to the extent that this character has, but you know, and having seen friends go through it, etc., like it's like a really dank, hard world, and that side of the internet and that kind of pro anorexia stuff is very troubling, but it does exist. And you know, we were there to kind of shed light on it, not to kind of give it oxygen, in the sense of like, you know, showing it to more people. I think it's never presented in a way that like, this is it's never like a kind of good choice for Stephanie or anything. It's just like, it's a symptom. It's a sort of showing her decline, I guess. Her investment in these things is because she's so lonely in her world. So that's just a manifestation of that. Sorry.
Oh, well, no, I was just going to say that there were two. Sorry, I meant to cut you off. There was a moment which surprised me, I think, which was that when Sean said to Pearl, "Are you using apps?" And it was a very kind of not a throwaway line. It wasn't throwaway at all. I just mean it wasn't like made a lot of, and she just said, "Oh yeah." And so that was quite interesting to me in that because you can tell that you've done your research in the making of the film. So you know, I was just kind of like, oh, okay, so that's something that is not only commonly discussed, but that the daughter wasn't sort of like, oh no, I would never. She's like, yeah, I have been. And I was just quite interested by that exchange, in that it seemed to be that there was a commonality of understanding about, what was going on, and that it wasn't necessarily to be brushed away. I thought that was just quite smart.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I think that was, I think in some drafts we went a bit more into the app thing, but then it just becomes like, oh, are you trying to make a documentary or some sort of, it's got to still be dramatic. So yeah, but I think when I was, in the grips of this stuff, like it was a lot about, I was quite a bit younger, so there weren't so many like app things, but it was calorie counting, and a lot of that stuff you can find these websites, and then and you can keep your little diary, and it can really get in your head if you're kind of susceptible to that stuff.
Yeah. Can I ask you a little bit about your camera choices and your working with your DOP? Because obviously the film, if people haven't had a chance to check it out, I hope they will. But the film has a very kind of sort of still sort of feeling to it, and then there are moments, which one of which I'll ask you about, and one of which I probably should keep secret in case it spoils it. But there are a couple of moments where you sort of you I think play with that, or sort of change the way that the viewer relates to the image, because of the things. Specifically, I'm thinking of one look to, well, it happens more than once, but the looks to camera, and then there was one very, very subtle, but I did notice it because it was the first time the camera moved, which was when you see the daughter, sort of tuck a bit of maybe start replicating that behaviour, and I was like, okay. So I wondered if you could just talk a little bit about how you thought through that strategy and how you planned it with your director of photography.
Yeah, great questions. So I met Darren for the job. I had never worked with him before, but he came to the meeting with loads of really great references, and for some reason it was really striking the fact that he had brought like books, and he wasn't showing me anything on a computer. He had bought loads of books, and anyway, I thought that was quite charming. Yeah, I like that a lot. So yeah, we had a really great rapport immediately, and we both knew that well, I had always, as I think mentioned earlier, like I had always conceived of this as like quite a kind of still, I wanted to give the character a lot of space, because I felt really conscious that if you got really up in her face and got close to her body all the time and all this stuff, it could turn into like some sort of like basically like fetishizing of her, or like making her, all the, really focusing on the physique and all of that, when actually it was a lot more about the psychology of her. Obviously the way she looks comes into it, but it's sort of secondary. So yeah, from the get-go, we were just sort of conscious of like, how can we, we obviously had, as I explained, like we had a lot of locations, so like the coverage we could get was like, obviously we had to be quite economical. But I've always liked working with like long takes, and I've always liked anyway. But and I felt like because of that, and like the references I mentioned, like stuff like Safe and John Dielman and these sort of classic domestic female dramas of a woman in a house, basically. I was quite comfortable with this idea of just having a lot of like locked off still shots. And so, but as the film evolves, the sort of language, the intention is that the language kind of changes, and kind of like the framing unravels a little bit. It all becomes a little bit weirder as it carries on to sort of reflect her mental state. And it's from being very central and very kind of specific, it kind of it comes off a bit. And so that was like, we had those conversations really early on, and I think we executed most of that pretty well. In terms of stuff like the camera movements, exactly. So because there's quite a lot of static camera, etc. When there is movement, and it kind of, and it tends to be when Pearl's involved, there is a bit more movement in the camera, and it's a lot, and like some of that is like handheld, etc. Where was I going with that? sorry, I totally blanked there. Yeah, so basically, as the language with her is slightly different, and that's just to sort of give a heightened sense of what Stephanie's, the stillness and sparseness of her existence is like. I think I could have gone further with that, to be honest. Like if I'd had more time and etc. I think I would have probably pushed that further. But I think it's still successful. And in terms of like the little looks to camera and stuff, like that was actually a conversation sort of with Shan and Darren, because we were sort of like, we want to give like an indication that this is like not just like like a kind of realism drama. Like I think doing that, there's a very small moment when there's these 3 scenes with her eating that kind of are, charting her sort of progression, I suppose. So yeah, and the first one, she does make this eye meet very briefly with the camera, and that was something that we discussed, the 3 of us, and it was just something like, okay, actually this is just giving an indication kind of that this isn't quite what you think it's going to be, this film as a whole, because it starts off in quite a kind of controlled and calm way, and you might be lulled into thinking it's something, but then that kind of throws you off a bit. So that was also Shan as well.
Yeah, it was nice. It reminded me a little bit of I mean, obviously it's not quite as extreme, but like the in Ratcatcher, like the sequence where is that mouse called Snowball, when he ties the mouse to his balloon, and obviously it doesn't go as far as that, but it was a moment where you kind of felt the register of the film shifting slightly, which I quite enjoyed. I thought it was nice. And the other thing it did remind me of actually was, I'm sure you probably know Every Frame a Painting. That guy who used to do those videos. Do you know?
Yes, yeah.
So he did one on David Fincher, and he said, so Fincher's a sticks kind of, he put it on the sticks kind of guy. And so in Girl and the Dragon Tattoo, he only uses handheld in 2 sequences, and in The Social Network, it's just 1 shot. And so I must admit that when I watched your film, I did kind of feel that the voiceover in that goes on to say that he derives his power from the movement of the camera by withholding it. So that when it does happen, it is underscoring in a very heavy way, as opposed to it wouldn't make any noise at all if it was all sort of blister and bashing. So maybe you could touch on the post process. So you finished you shot in May of 2018, and like how long were you cutting for, and maybe sort of take us up to festivals, because you did have some live in-person festival experiences, didn't you?
Finally, yeah, we did. I mean, it took a long time to finish. I'm not going to make any bones about it. And I think, the editor had a cut for when I came back. I had a break, obviously, after the shoot, and then she had a kind of assembly sort of cut together. And that was really cool, because it was like, okay, at least the film works. And then obviously we realized what things we needed to pick up and stuff. So we did an initial edit for about 3 months, I want to say, and then we had a bit of a break, so we had to do other things, came back and then did another kind of month or 2, I think, and so that takes us up to the end of 2018. And then and then we sort of were refining it, and we had to do the pickup day in Seaford, which is actually when we shot the ending, the very end scene. So
where is Seaford? Is that also near Canby, or?
It's actually not. It's near, I think it's more towards sort of Kent rather than Essex. But we had to do it there just because of various things to do. I don't want to give too much away. But so that was a big undertaking. I would like to talk more about that, but I mean, I don't want to ruin everything. So but yeah, that was quite a big thing. And then we had to go and refine with the things that we picked up, which was great. But then so yeah, that takes us about to the end of the year. And then we wanted to work with Technicolor, because Jodie Davidson had expressed an interest in working on the film after she saw the cut, and she's amazing. Like, she's worked with loads of great directors, and she actually did Claire's film as well. And so yeah, we agreed to work with her, but we kind of had to fit around some of the bigger budget projects, so that kind of made things drag out a little bit longer. And then we had obviously had some VFX. So, you know, with all the tinkering and all the, you know, it really, yeah, it kind of did drag a little bit by the end. So we finished it sort of towards the end of last year. Finished. Yeah, and yeah, at the same time we started working on the sound with Karine Koliat and Rory Atwell did the music, and that was great. They, you know, they were really great together. They were a really good team. So I really enjoyed doing all the sound stuff. I've always liked that kind of side of the filmmaking process anyway, and I've always actually enjoyed post-production. I feel like it's quite like writing, like editing. So to me, I really like, I get a kick out of just like throwing things around, and I can be quite ruthless, whereas I know some people can be a bit precious about, you know, chopping and changing, but it was quite transformative. But yeah, I should also say that we had a couple of sessions with the execs at the BFI and stuff again. It was a BFI and BBC, so we had to go and present the film a couple of times there, and they gave us feedback, which was really helpful. But again, you know, that took some time to get in everyone's diaries and things like that. So you can see how the time kind of slides away when there's so many people involved. And then, yeah, we started entering into festivals. We got kind of really close to a few, and then we got into Glasgow, and that happened in February of this year. So that was the last like in-person festival, I think, in the UK.
Wow.
Before we went into lockdown. Yeah, which is nuts to think about because we had no idea, obviously. It's so strange when I think back to it.
But how nice that you got to see it with an audience on a big screen, thank God, you know?
Yeah, it was so cool that we managed to kind of get it in, because God knows, you know, what would have happened. And it, you know, it's just really nice for everyone to get the opportunity to see, you know, to see their work on big screen. That's obviously why we're doing it, right? So yeah, we got to have our little kind of party and whatever. That was cool. But then, yeah, almost immediately went into the lockdown, and we didn't have a sales agent, so we were sort of reaching out to people. But you know, it was also a really weird time to be doing anything, because everyone's going into meltdown. So we're like, oh, you want to buy our film? So yeah, you know, that obviously that took a while to get together. But then obviously we confirmed with Verve, and they were really cool and supportive. And you know, but then it's taken to this point to kind of get it to the stage where it's being shown to the world. So yeah, it is. I mean, it's quite a long time ago since we shot it. It's 2.5 years, you know.
But do tell me what it was like with for you and John, particularly, like kind of watching it together. I mean, obviously, like this is something very personal, like to do with your own story, and then you've gone through a very quite personal process with her in terms of looking after her and sharing this, and then you get to have 400 or 800. I'm not sure how big your cinema was, but you have like a whole bunch of strangers seeing it. What was that like? Was it weird? It must have been very strange.
It was really weird. I have to say, I find that like quite, because I, you know, obviously you see the film hundreds of times, but like it's usually with like 4 other people who also know it really well. So you're reading that, you can't stop reading the room, and you're like, I don't know. I just find it really distracting, because I was like, sort of really aware of the energy. But we got a really nice response in Glasgow, and like some really thoughtful feedback, because we did a Q&A, and yeah, there was some people who worked with eating disorder in an eating disorder clinic, and obviously they had a sort of vested interest in this stuff. But they were really positive and really like, really, because it could be taken. It is quite a difficult film. Obviously, I know that. And it could be taken in like in a kind of negative way, but that's really not its intention. So I was really happy to see that it had all, it had been received in the way that I had intended it. And we had some really nice notices come out of Glasgow, and that I think was really good for everyone, because you laboring so long in the dark and not getting any feedback, it's a bit like, oh god. But Shan also, it was just really great. We sat next to each other and we were like, kind of laughing together a bit, because it was such a trip and such a journey. And like, I think we just couldn't quite believe that it was sort of finished and that people were responding to it the way that we hoped that they would. So yeah, it was really great. And then, I just feel very fortunate that obviously got it in under the wire before old lockdown happened. But
And just out of interest, do you know what, maybe this isn't to be revealed, I don't know, but did you have conversations with Verve about what their kind of their thoughts were about releasing it in these conditions, and what they felt that expectations might be? And I'm assuming that, you know, everybody's films, including Christopher Nolan's, are taking not as much money as they might have been expected to at one time. So it's going to affect everyone. But did those discussions sort of come up, or were they not really that relevant to you because you were getting, you know, your film out there and it was going to be as seen by as many people as it could be?
I don't think no one's ever had that conversation with me. It might have happened with the producers and the distributors, but it's never really been like mentioned to me. But I of course appreciate that. Yeah, if like James Bond is moving back to next year, this is not this is not a great time to be trying to get people to go to the cinema. However, you know, the world still turns, and you know, if there's, you know, I went to screening in Crouch End on Friday, and you know, they were doing a really great job. They'd removed seats. It was actually the nicest experience I've had doing anything like that since all this stuff has happened. So but yeah, it's scary, and I don't know, I don't know like how that will impact obviously like our box office, etc. Obviously it's not going to be it's probably not going to be great, but you know, it's the way it's happened, and you know, I'm just relieved to, you know, to be showing it to the world really, so I'm happy.
And I mean, so I don't know whether you got to see anything at London Film Festival, but I did go and get to see Another Round and Shirley kind of like in person, which I was very excited about. Did you get to go to see anything there? Did you have your eye on anything?
I haven't had the opportunity. I really want to see Shirley though. I love Josephine Decker and Elizabeth Moss, but I really want to see Limbo, which is another Scottish director, and it's about refugees in the north of Scotland. But yeah, it's supposed to be fantastic. But there's a few of the, I want to see Wildfire as well. Obviously, Kathy Brady just won the bursary. But yeah, there's quite a lot of great stuff coming out. So that's
we've got about sort of 10 minutes left. So what I was going to ask was, is there anything that you're currently working on at the moment that you can tell us about? I mean, maybe you're not in a place where you're able to start thinking about it, or maybe, you know, I've heard people like Paul Thomas Anderson say that sometimes he starts writing his next project like the day after his shoot, like kind of running on the energy from, you know, a kind of a sort of, you know, a prolonged physical kind of exercise, and suddenly they're ready to go. Like, do you have something that you're working on, or how do you kind of see yourself moving into another project, or is there going to be a break?
No, I'm definitely one of those people that I need to work to like live basically, and I definitely it's so nice to be able to write as well as direct, because at least if everything's going to shit with the directing side of things, you can control the writing side of things a lot more. So I've really, like, it's actually been quite a nice period this year. Well, nice is a weird word, but it's been a fruitful period in terms of writing and development. So I'm developing 2 features, one of which we're taking to Screen Scotland, and then another and a TV series that's sort of like a mystery 5-part limited series, but I'm just about to take out with a producer. So yeah, I really like, you know, and I'm also talking to you know, other production companies about TV projects and things like that, but I just yeah, it feels like such a big milestone to have a film out in the world that you can actually, you know, proudly show to people and be like, this is sort of who I am. It's my debut, so it's not perfect, but it's sort of giving you an indication of what I can do. And already I've seen a massive, you know, uptake, and there's been a big shift in sort of how you go into meetings, and also your confidence and things like that. So that's really been really great actually. But yeah, so I'm keeping busy with that. I also teach at a university. I teach screenwriting, so that's
where do you teach?
Yeah, I teach at Warwick.
Okay.
Yeah, so I teach a undergraduate course and a master and some master's classes as well.
Is that like a sort of an extended thing? I mean, I kind of do like a sort of, what's my term? I think I'm called a visiting lecturer at,
Oh, are you? Oh, cool.
not there, at Sheffield Hallam for the BFI
Yeah.
course, and I do LCC, I teach there, but but not very often. I'm not doing a whole term or anything, like I just do kind of like sort of odd days here and there. So how long is your teaching? Do you do a whole term? Are you miss
Yeah,
one?
I'm a full-time member of staff really, but full-time in inverted commas, but I'm a fellow, so yeah, I do classes every term. Yeah, come and do a guest lecture for us. That'd be lovely.
Yeah, well, it's fun. I like it.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. No, it's but I really like teaching actually. I get quite a lot out of it, and it's just nice. I feel like it's good to keep connected with like younger people actually, in a sense, because I don't know, because I know what they're talking about and they're interested in, and that's kind of that's kind of helpful sometimes. So but it's been a weird time obviously going back to that because of universities being a bit of a mess in terms of COVID stuff. So
yeah, no, the last one that I did was a Zoom one, and so my friend Colin runs like the MA course up in Sheffield, and
okay.
I was just talking to them about like kind of sort of how to pitch projects and how to package stuff, and like I've got a series which I'm pitching to Netflix and Amazon and the streamers and stuff like at the moment with a big American kind of outfit, and so we're kind of getting ready to do that. So I've been spending a lot of time doing that during my lockdown. I was going to ask Kate if you wanted to ask anything of Lucy.
Put me on the spot. I haven't seen your film yet, so it sounds great, but yeah,
that's fine.
I can't think of anything.
No problem.
I mean, it's interesting because I've just been pitching. Well, not pitching. I've been just writing something for a pitch, which is also about an inner struggle. It's quite, it's quite interesting.
So Kate's director, Lucy, who does quite a lot of sort of TV. You do like kind of Call the Midwife and like kind of shows like that, don't you?
Yeah. I've done some short films too.
Yeah, I think. Are you in the Cine Sisters group?
Yeah.
Your name on stuff. Yeah, that's cool.
We've got I've got one of the short films in the Aesthetica. So.
Yes. Did you do What Happened to
Evie? Yeah.
Yes, of course, because I'm friendly with Georgina, because she did the.
Oh, are you?
She was selected for the same thing of Microwave as I was with Tara Fitzgerald.
Oh right, yeah.
Yeah, so I met. Yeah, it was really like she was lovely. Yeah. Oh, okay.
No, she's great. She's great.
Yeah.
She's really nice. Yeah.
Because that Georgina.
I've got horrible shadows. I hate these bloody Zoom things.
No, it's not Georgina Oakley. It's Georgina French. I think
Georgina French. Yeah. Sorry, did I say it?
Or something?
Yeah. Georgina French.
So one of the things that I met, so where I met Kate actually, Lucy, was Tony Grisoni does I don't know if you know Tony, but he does a writer's thing called Stamtish, which is kind of a tribal meeting. I think that's the word for it. So his guests are wonderful because obviously he's been around and is very well connected. So his last guest, for example, was Ben Roberts, and so he does a sort of a thing which is sort of like this, but once a month. But he's mostly writers, and it's very much focused around writing. But I'd be very happy to put you in touch if you fancied being a part of that. I'm sure he'd be very keen if you were interested.
Yeah, I'd love to. Absolutely, please do. Yeah.
And how
it's usually in a pub, isn't it? It's just.
I think it's it's like the is it the Old Bell, which is just near sort of Tottenham Court Road. But how does your Cine Sisters thing work? Like when you're doing that in person, that's kind of No Direction Home tends to be more like kind of guest interviews, whereas Cine Sisters, as I understand it, tends to be more like kind of helping people out. Like one person comes and has an ask. Is that right?
It's usually like, I mean, I led a session once, and it was like I was talking about moving from shorts to features, and so it was a lot more like a conversation, but I was leading it.
Right.
But it would be quite. I don't know, Kate. Do you know how they've been running those sessions? I don't think they have.
Yeah, it seems to change. It seemed to change because I quite liked it when they had guests that were sort of came and talked and helped. But it seems to have gone more in the direction of somebody comes in with a problem and everybody talks about it. Which I don't know. Different horses for courses. I don't know. I don't always find that as useful. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's good, but sometimes I find it a bit. I don't know.
Yeah. But yeah, I think they also have a good script group, because my friend Deb Haywood does, she was mentioning she goes to that quite a lot, and it's just, I think it's specifically script workshopping, but I've never.
Oh, right, that's good.
Yeah, I didn't even know about it, but maybe
no.
just an email or something.
Well, we have a No Direction Home Writers group, which is basically a WhatsApp, which I set up during this, which we've done, I think, two sort of 2-week feature writing exercises where you're trying to bang out like 8 pages a day. And it's actually been pretty successful for some people. I mean, I found it really useful. I mean, and it's really just that you have a bunch.
You were banging them out, weren't you?
Well, I've actually written 2 scripts and redrafted another one sort of during lockdown, as well as doing all this development work. So that was one of the things I was doing to basically stop myself from going mad. I think it was quite a useful exercise. But the main thing, I think, Kate, we all realised was that it's just that the idea or the knowledge that other people are doing it with you, and that you're kind of your own. So like you're going, I had a good day today, or I had a shit day, doesn't matter, whatever. But you have this target, and it was derived from a website run by a script editor kind of guru guy called scriptshadow.net, which is, I think, an American guy. His name's Carson Reeves, I believe, and he kind of came up with this 2-week writing challenge, which was something he was challenging his followers to do, and I kind of spotted it and thought, that sounds like a good idea. So we've done that a couple of times.
Because I think it should make you just write, and not worry about it. But I'm not very good at that, so I think I was doing sort of 2 pages compared to everybody else's 8. But I did manage to finish a script, so that's amazing.
That's good.
Well, that's it. That's exactly the
thing. So you're responsible, Matt.
It's attempting to. Well, yes. I mean, obviously, let's assume it's a world-changing work of positivity. I think that the nice thing that I saw people getting from it was just that encouragement about like not sitting there on your own thinking, oh God, and bashing your head against the screen and not necessarily getting as far as you'd like. And I think that's the nice thing, is that and what we're trying to do with No Direction Home and why we're doing this essentially is to try and give people a chance to connect with each other.
Yeah, and it's so important now as well. Sorry, Kate, go on.
No, I was just going to say, I think that's been what's really difficult about the lockdown, hasn't it? Because we're all people that, I mean, I guess if you do more writing, you do have quiet periods, but certainly as directors, we're used to being with people and professional and doing professional stuff, and getting that professional approbation is really, you're just on your own, aren't you?
Completely. I know my friend, like I've got a couple of my friends, good friends, are cinematographers, and I know they just didn't know what the hell to do themselves, because it was just,
God, no.
It was like beyond their comprehension, having to sit at home all day. Like, it's just not.
Talk to their family.
It's like, welcome to my world, guys. It's all right. But it has been strange.
But hopefully we've all got something to sort of look back on it, and I think you've got something wonderful, which is that you've got your film out there, and I really hope that it does fantastically well for you. It sounds like it already is, so I don't think that my hoping will have any effect either way. But I was fantastically impressed with your. No, I thought it was great. I really enjoyed it, and obviously you've got some very well-known supporters like Peter Bradshaw and Wendy Ide, and you've had some really nice kind of notices. So huge congratulations on those.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's weird.
You've done well at the moment. It's brilliant.
Pardon?
I said you've done well at the moment. It's brilliant.
Thank you. But it's like the whole thing of doing all the press has been like, wow, like a big journey, but it's almost at an end, so it's all good.
Well, I'd like to say thank you so much for sparing your time to join us, and as I say, this will be going out to 600 people tomorrow, and we're encouraging people to go and see the film and hopefully get some bums on seats, or maybe some downloads and streams. So
I love your wallpaper as well. It's beautiful.
This is actually a screen. It's an old-fashioned, it's a vintage screen, so I use it as my backdrop, so you don't have to see into my living room. But you felt you wanted to curate your background. Yeah. But thank you.